Hey everybody. So this is a recreation of a webinar that I held on September 20th, and it was silly and forgot to actually record it. So I'm recreating it here now to show all of you what it was actually like to participate in the webinar, and hopefully you'll be able to gain a little bit of insight that the people who initially saw it got too. So here we go. So for the longest time, I had no idea what I was doing with my life. I was sort of jumping from interest to interest, passion after passion. For a time, I was a violinist. I was jumping from, you know, try again. Hey, everybody. Thank you for, try again. Hey, everybody. This is a recreation of the webinar that I held on September 20th. I'm doing it again for you here now so that try again. Hey, everybody. This is a recreation of the webinar that I held on September 20th. So if you're watching it now, you'll see what it was actually like to participate in it, and I hope that you gain some insight. So for the longest time, I had no idea what I was really doing with my life. I was jumping from interest to interest, passion to passion. For a time, I was a violinist, and then I dedicated my life to writing. When that didn't work out, I switched to business, and that was really expensive. When I ran out of money, I became a barista for 2.5 years, eventually winding up at an apprenticeship called Praxis, where I'm now focusing on marketing and brand development. So I went from a kid who lazed around all day to a productivity machine. At least that's what I thought at the time. Looking back, it feels like I was just throwing a bunch of shit on the wall, hoping that something would stick. But nothing ever did. Not in the way that I wanted them to. Not enough to make me believe that this thing was what I would do for the rest of my life. Not enough to satisfy me emotionally and provide a sense of fulfillment. But I realized over the years, from talking to friends and peers who were older than me, that no one really knows what they're doing, except for the very, very few that do, of course. But generally, nobody knows what they're doing. And to them, that knowledge was a relief. To me, it was horrifying because, yes, we were part of a group of people who are lost and finding their way in the dark. Yes, we are not alone in this struggle, but that's still a tragedy. Most millennials are still unfulfilled, unhappy, and even if we find ways to keep ourselves satisfied by reaching our goals, staying fit, binging Netflix, it doesn't seem to be enough, and we still wonder where on earth we're going. We wonder if we're really making an impact, and we don't know how to lead our lives. And that makes me really, really sad, It makes me terribly sad that this is our reality, our standard, where it's expected that no one should really know what they believe, and deep, meaningful relationships come one in a dozen, and where we don't feel safe enough to be ourselves, to be vulnerable without fear of judgment. And I don't mean going around crying to your friends and family. I mean going to someone that you trust and being able to say, I need help. Or, I don't know where I'm going. I messed up. I don't know what I'll do after college. Maybe I made a mistake, And as a result, our generation is kind of suffering. Depression is on the rise, drug addiction is on the rise, suicide is on the rise, and from what I've heard, it isn't getting any better. But this is the current standard of our generation, and I want to raise the bar. So how do we do that? I personally have no idea. I know how I'm doing it, but I can't say what any given person ought to do. But there's a recipe that I've been following for a while now, and it's consistently had a profound impact on every aspect of my life. So how did it all start? How did I go from a life of throwing shit on the wall to one of genuine meaning and fulfillment? Like most things, it began with a problem. So when someone asks us what our values and priorities are, we typically respond with something like, I don't know, my family, my friends, pets, I love my dog. These are the things that I care about, right? That's what we say. That's what I said. And it wasn't until an unfortunate series of events that I had a reality check. I said that I loved my family. If someone asked if I took care of them or did my best to take care of them or to be with them, I'd say yes. And yet, I don't think, well, it's not a matter of thinking, I didn't make my siblings or my family feel safe or comfortable enough to be vulnerable around me. We never talked about our feelings, about our struggles. And so when one of them suddenly came out about a very serious issue that we're having, we were all caught off guard. And then not long afterwards, another one of them came out with something that they've been struggling with. And, by that point, there was nothing that we could do to help them that much. They were struggling with this thing, and they didn't feel safe enough to go to us when we could really make a difference. And none of my family was aware that either of them were struggling with these things. After that, I took a step back and considered my other relationships in my life. And I could see issues in every single one of them. I wasn't a very good friend, I wasn't a very good husband, and I wasn't a good son. I say I prioritize my loved ones, so why doesn't my time and energy go to them? A parent can say they love their children, but if they invest neither their time nor their energy into them, neither their children nor anyone else will believe them. It's the same in every relationship. And I wanted to change that, so I did. How? It began with a choice. I chose to become authentic. What is authenticity? Authenticity means that the things we say and the things we do are actually the things we believe. And the reason being authentic matters so much is deeply ingrained in our instinctual need to survive. Simon Sinek, optimist and author of the book Leaders Eat Last, among others, put it best. He explains that back in the day, human beings were neither the fastest nor the strongest animals on the planet. Our very survival depended on our ability to live in groups and establish close, trusting relationships. Without trust, there would be no benefit to group living. For instance, if I go to sleep at night, I need to feel safe and secure enough to believe that someone in my group will look out and alert me to danger if it arrives. I need to know that they won't just run away and abandon me, or if we are running away, I need to know that they won't trip me to distract the wild animals chasing us. If I can't trust them to do that, I can't go to sleep at night. And so instinctively, we as humans are constantly evaluating the words and actions of others. We're assessing if they can be trusted. And to that end, the more we sense that our values and beliefs align with the values and beliefs of others, the more apt we are to trust them. It's like the more I'm surrounded or around somebody who thinks this thought. If I'm running away from something, I'm not going to trip the guy next to me to sacrifice them. If the person I'm running next to doesn't think that as well, then we're probably safe to assume that neither of us are going to trip each other as a sacrificial being to help everybody else survive. This is the reason we are drawn to people who are like us, who believe what we believe. If we sense that someone is acting primarily out of self-interest, if they tell us something because they want something from us, like a vote or a purchase or a favor, we raise an eyebrow and keep our distance. If they tell us something because they genuinely believe it and want to help us, even to the point of telling us something that may not be in their own best interest, we actually respect and trust them more. Because as far as our primitive brains are concerned, someone who fills us in on the bad news as well as the good news is a safer, more trustworthy person to be around than someone who tells us only the good news in an effort to curry our favor. It's the difference between manipulating somebody and inspiring someone. Manipulation will get people to do what you want, but it will never inspire trust. That is the value of authenticity. It allows you to communicate who you are to others, to attract people who share your values and beliefs. So how do you become authentic? I started with why. This chart is called the golden circle. It explains a very simple concept that is rooted in our biology. Literally, if you look at a cross-section of the human brain from the top down, you will see that the limbic system, the part of our brain that controls behavior, decision-making, emotion, corresponds to the who and how sections of this picture. It's where you get things like trust and loyalty. The analytical, logical, intellectual part of our brain that controls things like language corresponds with the neocortex, our newest brain. Every person on the planet knows what they do. They are writers, artists, entrepreneurs, etc. Some people know how they do it. They're a better writer because of this. Their small business earns more revenue because of that. Almost no one knows why they do what they do. When people say things like, I do this because it is my passion, they don't know why they do it. If they say, I'm in college because I want an education or a degree, they don't know why they're in college. Those are both results of what they do. Anybody can say these things. I'm not asking why college exists, which is to facilitate an education and reward people with degrees. I'm asking, why are you in it? Why are you an artist? By why, I mean, what is your purpose? What is your cause? What is your mission in this endeavor? Why do you get out of bed every morning, and why should anybody care? Most of the time, people communicate with others from the outside in. They start with what they do. We all know this. We all do this. What's the first question you usually ask a new acquaintance? So, what do you do? Oh, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an artist. Really? What is that like? What business are you in? What type of art do you make? In essence, how do you do it? And then, if there's a connection, the conversation will inevitably lead to, why do you do what you do? And people almost never have an answer for this. Not a clear answer. They can't quite put it into words, so we try to rationalize it with things like passion and money. The reason we struggle to articulate this is because the why of what we do is based in the limbic system, the part of our brain that has no capacity for language. It's where we make gut decisions. We decide not to take this job, not to hang out with this person, to not date somebody because it didn't feel right. There wasn't chemistry. Or when someone is really successful and people ask them how they got there, they say things like, well, I followed my gut. In the end, I followed my gut. There were a lot of variables, there were a lot of things that I was doing, but in the end, I followed my gut. I followed my intuition. It wasn't their gut. It was their limbic brain, the part of our brain that controls decision-making, choices, that drives action. If you don't know your why, you cannot truly be authentic. Because no one can know who you are if you don't quite know who you are. The culmination of your why, your how, your what creates the who of who you are. And no one will follow you if they don't know who you are and what you believe. This is one of the many reasons it's so hard for millennials to develop deep, meaningful relationships, because on a primal, instinctual level, we don't, quite trust each other. We don't really feel like we belong anywhere. We have very weak community because we don't know what we believe, or at least most of us don't. We don't quite know what we stand for. We don't know what the point is of waking up in the morning when we could just stay in bed for several more hours because, really, what difference would it make? What is my why? I wake up every day to help others understand ideas, people, and the relationship between the two. And then I help them articulate who they are, their brand, their vision, to others in a way that is inspiring and cultivates a sense of loyalty. I do this because I envision a world that is not yet reality. I envision a world where the vast majority of people know who they are, where deep, meaningful relationships are not the exception, rather the norm, the standard, and where people have the courage to be themselves. Every decision I make is singularly devoted to helping me reach that vision, and that is why I wake up every single day. And that's another thing. When you know your why, you can articulate it to yourself and others, something happens. This thing that's been in your life, that lack of direction, or the feeling of being lost and wandering through the fog, that clears up. Because suddenly you realize why you do anything. You realize why you get out of bed every day. You're able to visualize where you're going. And when you have a destination in mind, you are able to filter every decision you make toward reaching that vision. And people in your life, well, they'll talk to you and ask you why you're doing something. And you'll be able to tell them clearly. And they will be able to see your vision. And if they believe what you believe, they will want to follow you. They will want to be around you. because we are drawn towards those who believe what we believe. We are drawn towards those who are like us. What is a tribe? It's a group of people with a common set of values and beliefs. What is a religion? It's a group of people with a common set of values and beliefs. What is a culture? A group of people with a common set of values and beliefs. Now, if you have any questions in regard to finding your why, please write them down now. There will be a Q&A afterwards, but I'll give you a minute to write them down right now. Now, finding your why and being consistently authentic will certainly help you attract people into your life, people who believe what you believe. It'll give you direction or help give you direction as to which career path you should go on to. Figuring out the what of what you want to do with your life. And it'll help you attract more meaningful relationships. What it will not do is help you keep them. You meet someone new and you click, and all of a sudden you have a great new friend. But after a while, something happens. You stop texting as often. You don't check up on each other. You see each other on Facebook and Instagram, but you don't hang out so much. And neither of you take the first step of asking what happened or if there's anything wrong. You ghost them or you get ghosted, which sucks, The same goes for relationships. You meet someone amazing. You both have similar values and beliefs. There's a connection. There's chemistry. But when you begin to notice their little imperfections, they stop looking so good. And you either slowly drift apart or you ghost them. You delete them from everything and cease communication. Why do we do that? We have more self-help and relationship books out there than anyone would ever possibly need, and often at our fingertips. But we still don't utilize them. We don't apply what they say to our lives. Why? This is a second ingredient to leading your life. The concept was contextualized by Simon Sinek, among others, but the core ideas have been around for thousands of years and have been expressed by many great thinkers. And the way it works is rooted, once again, in our biology. I call it understanding the human condition or understanding relationships. I can't go as in-depth into it today, so inevitably I'll leave stuff out, but what I include is still pertinent. Let's start with the question we all ask. How do I find happiness? Let's take a look. The chemicals that are responsible for creating all the feelings that I would typically ascribe to, as happiness are endorphins, dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. So these chemicals are our body's way of trying to keep us alive. They incentivize us to do things that are in our best interest. It's an incentive system, much like at a job. If you reach this quota for the year, you'll get a bonus. Endorphins do one thing and one thing only: mask physical pain. It's what allowed us to have the endurance to hunt for miles upon miles upon miles. And even if we got tired, we'd keep going. And even if the animal carcass was heavy, we'd still bring it all the way back to the tribe. And it would feel good. It's one of the edges we had over other creatures in the Paleolithic era. Endorphins are the reasons people enjoy exercise. Now consider this from another perspective. When we feel emotional pain, the same areas of the brain get activated as when we feel physical pain. The reason we enjoy laughing so much is because endorphins, when we laugh, we're actually just convulsing our internal organs, and endorphins mask the pain and make us feel good. It's pleasurable. And so what do you do when you feel down? You go on the internet and you watch funny videos. You browse meme sites for minutes or hours, however long it takes to get your fix. We've all had the experience of laughing for so long that we go, stop, 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 it hurts. That's the endorphins running out. Dopamine incentivizes us to get things done. It's your boss giving you a reward for increasing a metric. It's your parents giving you dessert after eating your vegetables. It's why we enjoy checking off to-do lists. It's why it feels great to be productive with our day. Back in caveman times, the reason dopamine was so necessary was because it encouraged us to go get food even if we weren't quite hungry. Like when you imagine eating a thick, a juicy cheeseburger and all of a sudden you want to go get one. It was the same thing back then. This was important because if we only ever waited until we were hungry to go find food to eat, there was never a guarantee that we would find anything. You know, we might starve while hunting, or worse, get killed because we were taking on a wild beast on an empty stomach. We are visual creatures, and we need to be able to see our goals if we're to garner the motivation to achieve them. You got to be able to visualize a cheeseburger, visualize success, visualize what it would look and feel like to achieve the life you want. When you see something you want, you get a shot of dopamine. When you get closer to the cheeseburger, you get another shot. And when you finally reach it and take a bite, you get a surge of dopamine in your system. It's why eating feels good. When you can visualize your goal, your body literally incentivizes you to reach it. It's why vision boards work. It's why they're a trend. You don't put a vision board in your closet. You put it on your wall where you can see it. That's the point. That's dopamine. Here's a little aside that may or may not be appropriate. When you're on a first date and it's going well and you're connecting and you begin to think things like, oh my God, this person, they're everything that I've been looking for. This must be love. It's not love, it's dopamine. You've had this ideal version of a mate for such a long time, and you finally reach it, and you reached your goal. It's dopamine. You get a little shot of it. Be wary, however, because dopamine is also highly addictive. Most addictions are dopamine addictions, and some things that release dopamine include alcohol, gambling, certain drugs. I'm pretty sure video games, your cell phone. I'd stay on this topic a bit longer, but unfortunately, I'll have to save it for another time. Now, you don't need anybody's help in getting dopamine and endorphins. Go on a run, reach your goals, you'll get them. What you will never gain from them, however, are feelings of fulfillment, love, belonging, or trust. Those are what oxytocin and serotonin do. They're helping to regulate these chemicals. These are what allow humanity to accomplish amazing feats. Serotonin is responsible for feelings like pride or status. It's responsible for confidence and, dare I say, self-esteem. It's why public recognition is so very important. Why else have these grandiose ceremonies like the Oscars and the Grammys? Why go all out for graduation or commencement? Remember when you were at graduation, you got up on stage and walked towards your diploma? And as you did, you could feel your confidence rising and your status with it. When you grabbed your diploma, when you got the reward, you got a surge of serotonin, and you looked into the crowd and you saw your parents. Immediately in that moment, you both got a shot of serotonin. And when people are asked to speak when they receive these awards, what do they say? They acknowledge the people who got them there. They say things like, I couldn't have done this without you. Or you're the real MVP. And their parents, your mentors, they say things like, we're so proud of you. That is my son, or that is my daughter, that is my student. And it feels great. That's the point. That is what serotonin is trying to do, to reinforce the parent-child relationship, or the relationship between the caregiver and the one receiving the care. You could wake up the day after graduation and receive your diploma in a PDF to print out on your own, and you'd still have all the qualifications that come with it. But no, we set up these huge events. It's important to us. Public recognition is critical. It reinforces the bonds within the tribe, makes us more tightly knit as a group, and when we're more tightly knit, when we all feel safe, like we belong together, we are better able to protect each other from the outside world. The problem, however, is that we can trick serotonin. We live in a materialistic society that values things and money over people. Many people work day in and day out at their soul-sucking jobs so that they can raise their status in society and purchase things that represent success, like the cars or the big house, the expensive clothes, but it doesn't last. It doesn't work. And we always end up wanting more. We never get satisfied. Because we didn't do what serotonin was trying to get us to accomplish. There was no relationship reinforced. We could have all the things anyone could ever want: money, authority, status. But if our relationships are in tatters, none of it matters. It doesn't work. You trick the system, we trick the system, and so many of us live unhappy as a result. The next chemical is the best of them all, oxytocin. It's the feelings of love, of safety, of trust, and fulfillment. It's why we feel perfectly comfortable hanging out with friends and doing nothing but watching shows. We enjoy their company. When you go to the movies, you leave empty seats between your friends and strangers. Why? Because for some reason we think strangers are kind of scary. Like there's something discomforting about them. We don't want to be around them because we don't know who they are. If you and your friend both entered the room and they sit in one place and you sit away from them, they'll probably look at you like, what's your problem? Do I stink or something? It's why we are in constant longing for deep, meaningful relationships. Why loneliness sucks and is frankly very bad for you. So how do you get oxytocin? How do you get it? A few different ways. The first is physical contact. It's shaking hands, hugging, kissing, caressing, fondling. During childbirth, the mother releases a huge surge of oxytocin that is responsible for the mother-child bond. It's why we shake hands whenever making a deal. It's why we hug our friends and family when meeting up with them. If you went over to your best friend and offered a hug and they back away from you, that'd be weird, right? Touch is incredibly important to us. Or when you're in a relationship and you have a fight with your partner, and then the dust settles and you want to touch their hand or hug them or give them a kiss or anything so that you can know whether or not the relationship is still stable. It's human contact. The second way to get oxytocin is through acts of human generosity. An act of human generosity is defined as giving your time and energy and expecting nothing in return. Money doesn't work, unfortunately, or fortunately. You can always get more money if you give it to someone, but you will never get your time back. We hear stories of people on their deathbed, and they never say things like, I regret not having made more money. They say, I regret not having spent enough time with my family and people that I love. Or when our loved ones pass away, we say, I wish I had more, I wish I'd spent more time with them. We put a premium on time, and we put a premium on people who are willing to invest their time in us. A friend who simply buys you things is not a friend. A friend who sits down with you and asks how you're doing, who is willing to make time for you, that is a friend. There was an amazing quote I read recently that went, some friends only hang out with you when they have free time. Others free up their time to hang out with you. Just something to think about. Now, acts of generosity require that you give up your time and energy and expect nothing in return. If you do, you aren't being generous. It's a transaction. And if you are not being generous, you will not get oxytocin. Treating someone to lunch so that you can curry their favor in the future is not generous. It's a transaction. You expect something to come back to you. It doesn't work. No trust, no love, no relationship reinforced. It's why we appreciate handwritten letters, more than text messages or emails or gift cards. We know it took time and effort to make this thing, and the fact that they did it just to say thank you means a lot. It's human. We also get oxytocin from witnessing and receiving acts of generosity. It feels good to see a group of people taking care of each other. Our bodies are attempting to incentivize us to do things that are in our best interest by making us feel good, of keeping us alive. Like sex feels great, it makes us want to procreate. It feels good to witness and receive acts of generosity because our biological systems are incentivizing us to do them. It feels good to see people taking care of each other so that we will pay it forward. And the more oxytocin you have in your body, the more kind you want to be, the more generous you become. Another amazing thing is that having a large amount of oxytocin in your system actually inhibits addiction. It boosts your immune system. It makes you feel healthier. That's why happy people live longer. In couples, they live longer. When there's plenty of oxytocin in our bodies, our problem-solving skills improve. We become more creative. And oxytocin isn't even addictive. It just feels good. It feels wonderful. It takes time to build up, however, and it doesn't happen immediately. If I were to go on a date with somebody, and on that same night I came back and said I'm gonna marry her, you'd say, "What, dude? That's crazy." And I'd say, "I know. I'm in love. She feels the same way. It's crazy." But then you'd probably advise that we go on a few more dates, right? But if we'd been dating for 7 years and we still hadn't committed to each other, you'd likely say, "Dude, what is the problem? Why haven't you sealed the deal?" We say these things because we know that these deep, meaningful bonds take more than 7 years, but less than 7 years. It's somewhere in the middle of it. And this is the same with all human relationships. It takes time, it takes energy, and consistent little acts of generosity. Nothing big, just little things. The final chemical I want to bring up is cortisol. Now, as millennials, I'm sure most of you know it well. I know I do. It is a feeling of stress and anxiety. Its purpose is to keep us alive. It's the first stage of fight or flight, makes us paranoid and gets all our senses highly attuned to look for danger. It injects glucose into our muscles and makes us stiff and ready to go. Our heart rate rises. We're ready for the danger. And when someone else sees us like this, they get it too. They become alert. And then the next person becomes alert. It's like animals in the wild. If one perks up and begins to run, they all start running. Cortisol keeps us alive in the face of danger. Stress is infectious. I'm sure we've all had the experience when someone is in the room and they're angry and they're frustrated and tense and they look like they're going to blow up at any moment. And before we know it, we're stressed out too. Another thing about cortisol is that in order for it to acquire the necessary energy to keep us in that alert state, it shuts down all non-essential systems. Our fingernails stop growing. Our immune system shuts down. We get sick more easily and more frequently. It inhibits the production of oxytocin. So when cortisol is running through our systems, we become less empathetic, less thoughtful, and you don't trust people and you don't feel safe. You stick out for number one because you feel like you have to. Cortisol is necessary. It keeps us alive. But it is meant to be in and out of our systems quickly. It is not meant to endure. But when we live and work in environments that don't make us feel safe, when we can't be with our own families without feeling judged, when we dread going to work because of all the stress, and when we have no genuine friends to support us when we need them, we get little bits of cortisol dripping into our systems. If we live in environments where we're always having to watch our backs, where we're always having to fend for ourselves, we become self-interested because that is what cortisol does. We stop caring about others because we're too busy trying to protect ourselves. And as a result, our health declines, our relationship becomes strained, and the group falls apart. It doesn't work. Living and working in environments that keep you consistently stressed over long periods of time will literally kill you, and it'll do it slowly, day by day. Like I said, many of us millennials were dealt a bad hand. And most of us don't know how to take care of each other in the way that we need. It's not our fault. We're not bad people. We're just never taught how. Stop trying to manage your family and friends, or stop judging people over this or that little issue. As I said, we need to learn how to lead our lives, to become leaders in our own lives. And being a leader has nothing to do with authority. It's more akin to being a parent. And there are shit parents and there are great parents. Those who are shit usually try to manage every little aspect of their children's lives. Great parents put us in positions where we can fail. And when we fall down, they pick us up. And when we fall down, they pick us up. And when we fall down, they pick us up. And they keep doing that until we learn to do it ourselves. They don't tell us how. We figure it out. It just takes time. And there are only 2 requirements to being a leader. The first requirement is compassion. What does this look like? Quick example. Let's say someone comes up to you and you've offended them or something like that. You don't know quite what it is, but they don't look quite happy. And so when they come up to you, they begin to say, when you did this, You made me feel incredibly small. And then before they can continue saying what they're trying to say, you react. You react, and then immediately respond, well, you did this to me. And then it turns into an argument. And you stop listening, and they stop listening, and nothing ends up being resolved. You have an argument for such a long time to the point where you forget what caused it to begin with. Compassion would look like the person coming up to you, and instead of just reacting, you take time, you calm down, you stay patient, and you listen to what they have to say. Then afterward, you say, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel like that. What can I do to be better? Or something like that. And then the second requirement is being able to offer perspective or advice. For instance, if someone came up to me and they asked for advice on chemistry or, calculus, I would tell them to go to somebody else because I can't help them with that. But if they came to me asking for advice or help with their writing, then I'd be more than willing to help them because I would know how. I'd be able to offer them perspective and advice on what they're struggling with. However, it goes in that order. If you try to get someone to change their life by offering only your perspective, it's likely not going to work. And we've all had that experience, I'm assuming at least. If you start with compassion, however, if you start by making them feel safe around you, like they belong, like you actually care about that person, they will be so much more willing to hear your opinion. And that goes for us individuals too. We need to learn to be kinder to ourselves, be more patient with ourselves. Life is hard. We make mistakes. We fall short of our expectations, our standards. We can forgive ourselves for that because we aren't perfect and we never will be. And no matter how many self-help books you read, you will never be flawless. And that's part of the problem. There are entire sections in the bookstore entitled self-help, but there are 0 sections entitled help others. I think we owe it to each other to change that. And when you go out of your way to help those around you succeed, they in turn will work to see that you also succeed. It's not just a pithy, happy-go-lucky hippie answer. It's not hippie bullshit. This is our biological reaction, our anthropological reaction. That is cooperation. That is trust. That is friendship. We're social creatures. It's how we work. There's one final concept that I'm going to cover. You might understand people and how to maintain meaningful relationships, but how do you become resilient in a world where the vast majority of people still value things and money over people? How do you remain resilient in a world where the majority of people don't care about your vision, don't care about your why? How does an idealist keep from losing hope? Or rather, how do you remain sincere in a world of cynicism? I'm assuming that all of you have been alive for quite some time, and in your life, I'm certain that we've all met or know somebody who is incredibly jealous of other people. When they see someone else doing well in life, they aren't happy for that person. They say things like, I should have gotten that part, or I should have gotten that promotion, or I should have won the lottery. They get pissed off by little things like spilt milk and long lines and red lights. They're perfectionists, They're people who, after achieving ostensible success, still aren't happy. After getting that promotion, after becoming financially free, after getting published, they are not satisfied. Or rather, they're even unhappier than they were beforehand. They reach goal after goal after goal, wondering why they haven't won this game. And the reason for this is because they don't quite realize what game they're playing. And this is the final ingredient to my recipe for life. In game theory, there are 2 types of games. There are finite games and there are infinite games. A finite game is defined as known players, fixed rules, and an agreed upon objective. Like baseball. We all agree to the rules and we know when the game ends. Nobody ever goes, just let me take one more shot. Not how it works. An infinite game is defined as known and unknown players. The rules are malleable, and the objective is to keep the game in play, to perpetuate the game. When you pit two finite players against each other, the game is stable. Soccer is stable. When you pit two infinite players against each other, the game is also stable. The Cold War is stable because there can't be a winner and there can't be a loser. That's not an outcome that anybody wants. You can't win an infinite game. What happens is that players will drop out of the game when they lose either the will or the resources to keep on playing. And so in that way, the US didn't technically win the Cold War, the Soviet Union simply dropped out. Trouble arises when you pit a finite player against an infinite player, because one is playing to win and the other is playing to keep the game in play, to perpetuate the game. And what it invariably happens is that the finite player will always find themselves in a state of quagmire. Quagmire is defined as an awkward, complex, or hazardous situation. This is the US during Vietnam. We were fighting to win, and the Vietnamese were fighting for their lives. Then there's business. The game of business, by its very definition, is an infinite game. There are known and unknown players. You don't know all the competitors. The rules are changeable. We don't all agree as to what the rules are. And you can't win the game of business. The game of business has existed before all companies in existence, and it will exist after them. But if you listen to the language that people in companies use, it appears that most don't know what game they're in. Because they say things like, to be number one, or to beat the competition, or to make the most money. They say that these things are their goals, but those are arbitrary. They don't mean anything in the long run. They think they're playing a finite game as if there is a goal to reach, and as a result, companies that operate in this way find themselves frustrated by the competition. They find themselves in quagmire against those who play the infinite game. Companies that play the infinite game will frustrate the finite players. For instance, for a while, Microsoft focused nearly all of its energy on being better than Apple. Apple's goal, at least while Steve Jobs was around, was to make a contribution to the world by making tools for the mind that advance humankind. You can guess which player got frustrated. The infinite players also understand that the goal is not to be better than the other players. The goal is to outlast them. They understand that sometimes you'll be ahead and sometimes you won't. It's not the point. The point is to keep playing. They're competing against themselves. How can we as a company be better than we were the day before? How can we improve our product? How can we treat our people better? We can study our competition tactically, but there is no reason to do it strategically. In fact, it makes zero sense. It's the difference between what can we do to become more like our competitors versus what ideas can we use from them to make us a better version of ourselves. Another infinite game is a game called life. There are known and unknown players. The rules are changeable, and the goal is to perpetuate life, to keep the game in play. There is no goal you are trying to reach when you play the infinite game. When you do this, your competition won't frustrate you because it's not about beating them, and it's not about staying ahead all the time. It's about bettering yourself day in and day out. And sometimes you'll slip up, you'll make mistakes. That's okay. We can forgive ourselves, like I said. The goal is to stay in the game, not success, not growth. These aren't goals. Success is a result. Growth is a result. To be the best at anything is not a goal. It's arbitrary. It doesn't mean anything in the long run. There are two primary components to this game. There are the infinite components. These are our whys, our values, our ideas, our causes. By nature, they are intangible and difficult to measure. Then there are the finite components within the game. These are your whats, your interests. They are tangible and easy to measure, and they are all important. The why isn't any more important than the finite components of the game. But if you don't have any one of them, it's like a missing piece to a puzzle or a missing piece to a structure. If any one of them is missing, the whole thing falls apart, or rather, it doesn't quite work out very well. The goal is to run all our decisions, all our choices, through our values and then through our interests. What is a values-based decision? You're running to a meeting all busy and such when you see someone who needs your help. So you go to them and you help them out of their ordeal and they thank you. And you both get a little bit of oxytocin. However, you end up missing your meeting. That's okay. Because we know that we made a values-based decision. We sacrificed our time and interest to save someone or to help someone else because that's just who we are. That's what we believe in doing. The issue with playing finite is that all the infinite components of the game get ignored. And so when the game doesn't go our way, we become frustrated. Our friends get our promotion. Our coffee spills on our papers. The project takes longer than we intended. We react and react and react. In any given moment, you may think yourself a rational or logical person who, quote unquote, knows what they're doing. But when you take a step back, you can clearly see that your culture, your personal culture, is a mess. And neither you nor anybody else knows what you stand for. You don't know where you're going or why you're going. You're just going. And you say things like, I made $100,000. Why? To what end? It's like saying I'm going to fly 1,000 miles in a private jet. If you ask me to come with you, I'm going to ask where you're going or why you're going there. Or it's like when people say, I was so relieved when I grew up and realized that adults don't know what they're doing either. What they mean to say is, I was so relieved to learn that I'm not alone in this. And yes, we're a part of a group. Yes, you're still with a group of people who are struggling together. But that group still doesn't know what they believe. And they have no idea where they're going. The problem has not disappeared. The point of making values-based decisions is that no matter how you operate your finite components, whatever decisions you make, people will be able to look at you and say, I know what you stand for. I believe as you believe. I trust you. I want to be your friend, to follow you, to be with you. And if you live your life like this, you will endure. And if you do this well, you begin to thrive. Thank you.